The glass shattered around them as bullets pierced the safe house windows. Amara pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering as footsteps echoed through the hallway. 3 weeks ago, she'd walked into an interview barefoot and desperate. Now she was hiding from assassins who wanted to use her to destroy the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. "Where is she?" a voice hissed in the darkness. Amara's fingers found the emergency alarm panel. One touch would bring Ruyon's men, but it would also confirm she was here. The Korean Mafia boss had warned her this might happen. People who got close to him became targets. She thought about his words from that morning. "You're not just my assistant anymore, Amara. You're the one thing I can't afford to lose." The footsteps grew closer. Her breath caught as a shadow moved past the doorway. Everything had started with a job interview. Now it might end with her death. But Amara had learned something important in these past weeks. She wasn't the same frightened girl who'd lost her shoes on a bus. She was someone worth fighting for, and Ruyon was coming. Welcome to Korean Mafia Lovers. Before we dive into this incredible story, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything and helps us bring you more amazing stories like this one. 3 weeks earlier, Amara stood outside the gleaming corporate tower in downtown Los Angeles, her bare feet cold against the marble steps. The morning rain had stopped, but her dignity felt as soaked as the pavement. She'd lost her only pair of professional shoes helping a sick child on the bus. The little boy had been throwing up, and his mother was panicking. Amara hadn't hesitated to help, using her cardigan to clean him up, and her shoes to prop up his head. When they rushed off at the hospital stop, her shoes went with them. Now she faced the most important interview of her life, with nothing but determination. The Meridian Group's lobby was a cathedral of success, white marble, floor-to-ceiling windows, and the kind of quiet that money bought. 25 women sat in perfectly arranged chairs, each one a masterpiece of professional polish. Designer suits, Italian leather bags, manicures that cost more than Amara's monthly grocery budget. She walked to the reception desk, her chin high despite the stares. "Amara Johnson for the executive assistant position," she said clearly. The receptionist's eyes flicked to her feet, then back to her face. "Please take a seat. Mr. Kim will begin interviews shortly." Behind the mirrored glass of his private office, Ruyon Kim watched the waiting area through security monitors. At 32, he'd built an empire that existed in two worlds, legitimate businesses that generated millions and underground operations that controlled half of LA's port traffic. The executive assistant position was crucial. Whoever filled it would have access to schedules, meetings, and information that could destroy him if it fell into the wrong hands. He'd been studying each candidate for weeks. Background checks, financial records, family histories. He knew their secrets before they walked through his door. But the woman who'd just entered wasn't in his files. She was supposed to be candidate number 26, a last-minute addition his HR director had insisted on including. Amara Johnson, 27, economics degree from community college, currently working 3 part-time jobs to support her younger sister through nursing school. What his files hadn't captured was the way she carried herself. Barefoot and clearly struggling financially, she still moved through his lobby like she belonged there. No apologies, no shame, just quiet strength. Ruyon's assistant, Mrs. Chen, knocked and entered. "Sir, there's been a situation with candidate 26. She arrived without proper footwear. Should I reschedule her?" "No." Ruyon's voice was firm. "Bring her in first." Mrs. Chen looked surprised but nodded. "Yes, sir." Ruyon straightened his charcoal suit jacket and checked his reflection. The dragon tattoo on his neck was barely visible above his collar, a reminder of the world he truly belonged to. His hair was perfectly styled, parted in the middle and swept to both sides, giving him the polished look of a legitimate businessman. When Amara entered his office, something shifted in the air. She didn't flinch at his piercing gaze or the intimidating silence he used to unnerve people. Instead, she met his eyes directly and waited. "Ms. Johnson." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please sit." "Thank you." Her voice was steady, professional. Ruyon studied her as she settled into the chair. Her dress was simple but clean, a pale blue that brought out the warmth in her dark skin. Her natural hair was styled in a neat bun, and despite her circumstances, she radiated a calm confidence that intrigued him. "I notice you're not wearing shoes," he said, his tone neutral. "No, sir. I'm not. She didn't elaborate, didn't make excuses. Why? Amara considered her answer carefully. I helped someone who needed help more than I needed shoes. The simplicity of her response caught him off guard. In his world, people always had elaborate explanations, justifications, angles, but this woman offered only truth. Tell me about yourself, he said. I'm hardworking, reliable, and I learn quickly. I've been managing multiple jobs for 3 years while putting my sister through school. I'm good with details, I don't gossip, and I understand the importance of discretion. What makes you think you're qualified for this position? I don't know if I am, she admitted, but I know I'll work harder than anyone else you interview. This job would change my life, and I don't take opportunities like that lightly. Royan leaned back in his chair. Most candidates tried to impress him with connections, achievements, or flattery. Amara offered honesty and determination, qualities he'd almost forgotten existed. The position requires long hours, travel, and absolute confidentiality. Can you handle that? Yes. Even if it means missing family events, social commitments, personal time. Mr. Kim, I've been working 3 jobs for 3 years. I already don't have personal time. The difference is this job would actually lead somewhere. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. What do you know about the Meridian Group? Real estate development, import-export, and consulting services. You've expanded rapidly in the past 5 years, with projects across the West Coast. You're known for being selective about partnerships and maintaining privacy around business operations. She'd done her homework. More importantly, she'd focused on the legitimate side of his business, which meant either she was naive about his real activities or smart enough not to mention them. Do you have any questions for me? Amara hesitated, then spoke carefully. What happened to your last assistant? She accepted a position elsewhere. It was technically true. His last assistant had been relocated to a safe house in Portland after discovering too much about his operations. I see. Amara nodded. Mr. Kim, I want to be clear about something. I need this job, but I won't compromise my integrity to keep it. If that's a problem, it's better we know now. Ruyan stared at her for a long moment. In his world, integrity was a luxury most people couldn't afford, but something about the way she said it, not as a challenge, but as a simple fact, made him believe her. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I'll be in touch. Amara stood gracefully. Thank you for your time. After she left, Ruyan sat in silence, staring at the door. 24 more candidates waited outside, each one more qualified on paper than Amara Johnson. But none of them had walked into his office barefoot and made him forget, even for a moment, that he was one of the most dangerous men in the city. He pressed the intercom button. Mrs. Chen, cancel the remaining interviews. I've made my decision. Amara's phone rang at 7 a.m. on Monday morning. Ms. Johnson, this is Mrs. Chen from the Meridian Group. Mr. Kim would like to offer you the position of executive assistant. Can you start today? Amara sat up in her narrow bed, fully awake. Today? Yes. He'll need you to sign paperwork and begin orientation immediately. Can you be here by 9? Yes, absolutely, thank you. 2 hours later, Amara stood in the Meridian Group's executive suite, wearing her best outfit. A black blazer she'd found at a thrift store, and the only pair of heels she owned. Her sister Zara had insisted on doing her makeup that morning, declaring it a historic moment. Mrs. Chen led her through a maze of offices and conference rooms. Mr. Kim's schedule is demanding and often changes without notice. You'll manage his calendar, screen calls, coordinate travel, and handle confidential correspondence. He values efficiency and discretion above all else. They stopped outside Ruyan's office. Through the glass walls, Amara could see him on a phone call, his expression intense. He wore a navy suit today, and something about his posture suggested the conversation wasn't pleasant. He's finishing a call with Seoul, Mrs. Chen said quietly. International business requires early mornings. When Ruyan ended the call, Mrs. Chen knocked and entered with Amara. Sir, Ms. Johnson is here for orientation. Ruyan looked up, and for a split second something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or relief. Good morning, Amara. I trust Mrs. Chen has explained your responsibilities. Yes, sir. Excellent. Mrs. Chen, please give us a moment. When they were alone, Ruyan stood and moved to the window overlooking the city. I want to be clear about something. This position will expose you to sensitive information about my business operations. Complete confidentiality isn't just preferred, it's essential. Do you understand? Yes. He turned to face her. I mean it, Amara. What you see and hear in this office stays in this office, no exceptions. There was something in his tone that made her study his face more carefully. Behind the polished businessman exterior, she sensed layers she couldn't quite read. I understand, Mr. Kim. You can trust me. Good. He returned to his desk. Your first task is to reschedule my 2 o'clock meeting with the Harbour Commission. Something's come up that requires my immediate attention. The morning flew by in a blur of phone calls, emails, and learning the complex systems that ran Ruyon's empire. Amara quickly realized that his business operations were far more extensive than she'd imagined. Shipping schedules, warehouse inventories, personnel files for dozens of employees. The scope was overwhelming. Around noon, a man in an expensive suit entered the office without knocking. He was younger than Ruyon, with sharp features and an attitude that set Amara's nerves on edge. Hyung, he said in Korean, then switched to English when he noticed Amara. We need to talk. Ruyon's expression hardened. Jay, this is Amara, my new assistant. Amara, my cousin Jay. Jay's eyes swept over her dismissively. Interesting choice. Is there something you need? Ruyon's voice carried a warning. The shipment from Busan arrived early. There are complications. Ruyon stood. Amara, please hold my calls for the next hour. Of course. As they moved toward a private conference room, Amara caught fragments of their conversation in Korean. She didn't speak the language, but their body language was tense, urgent. When they returned an hour later, Jay looked frustrated and Ruyon looked dangerous. Amara, Ruyon said calmly, I need you to clear my schedule for the rest of the day. Tell anyone who calls that I'm unavailable. Should I reschedule the appointments? No. Just cancel them. After Jay left, the office felt charged with tension. Ruyon made several phone calls in Korean, his voice low and controlled, but Amara could sense the steel beneath his calm exterior. At 6 p.m., when the office had emptied, Ruyon emerged from his private conference room. Amara was still at her desk organizing files. You should go home, he said. I'm almost finished with these reports. They can wait until tomorrow. Amara looked up at him. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly mussed, and there was a weariness in his eyes that made him seem more human. Mr. Kim, is everything all right? The question seemed to surprise him. Why do you ask? You seem stressed. Ruyon studied her face. Business complications. Nothing you need to worry about. Okay. She gathered her things. I'll see you tomorrow. As she reached the door, his voice stopped her. Amara. She turned back. Thank you for staying late, for handling everything today. You did well. Something in his tone made her chest flutter. Thank you for giving me the chance. That evening, as Amara rode the bus home to her small apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to Ruyon Kim than met the eye. The phone calls in Korean, the tension with his cousin, the way he'd cancelled his entire afternoon, it all pointed to complications beyond normal business operations. But she'd meant what she said about discretion. Whatever Ruyon was dealing with, it wasn't her place to ask questions. What she didn't know was that 3 blocks away, in a black sedan, 2 men were photographing her through telephoto lenses. That's her, one said into his phone. The new assistant. Should we move on her? The voice on the other end was cold. Not yet. Watch and wait. If she's important to Kim, she'll be useful to us. As Amara's bus disappeared into traffic, the sedan pulled away from the curb, its occupants already planning their next move. 3 weeks into her new job, Amara had settled into Ruyon's demanding routine. She arrived at 7 a.m. to review his schedule, stayed until he dismissed her, usually around 8 p.m., and had learned to read his moods with startling accuracy. She'd also learned that Ruyon Kim was not just a businessman. The signs were subtle but unmistakable. Phone calls that ended abruptly when she entered the room, meetings with men who carried themselves like soldiers, security protocols that seemed excessive for a real estate developer, and the way Ruyon's entire demeanor shifted when certain names were mentioned. But Amara kept her observations to herself and did her job with quiet efficiency. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, everything changed. Ruyon was in back-to-back meetings when a small boy appeared in the reception area, soaking wet and looking lost. He couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with Ruyon's dark eyes and the same stubborn set to his jaw. "Excuse me," he said to Amara in accented English. "Is my Appa here?" Amara's heart melted. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Min Kim, Ruyon's son." Amara had seen photos on his desk but had never met the boy. "Let's get you dried off," she said gently, grabbing tissues from her desk. "How did you get here?" "I walked from school. Appa was supposed to pick me up, but he didn't come." Amara checked Ruyon's calendar. He had a note about school pickup, but it was scheduled for 4 p.m., an hour from now. "I think there might have been a mix-up with the time," she said carefully. "Your dad is in a meeting, but I'll let him know you're here." She knocked on the conference room door and slipped inside. Ruyon was discussing shipping manifests with 3 serious-looking men. "Mr. Kim, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Min is here." Ruyon's expression shifted instantly from business to concern. "Minnie. What's wrong?" "He walked here from school. I think there was confusion about pickup time." Ruyon excused himself and followed Amara to the reception area, where Min was sitting in her chair, swinging his legs. "Mina," Ruyon said in Korean, his voice gentle but firm. "What are you doing here?" "School ended early today. Teacher said you knew." Ruyon's jaw tightened. "I didn't get the message." "Are you hurt? Did anyone see you walking alone?" "No, Appa. The nice lady gave me tissues and said you were busy." Ruyon looked at Amara with something like gratitude. "Thank you." "Of course." Amara smiled at Min. "Would you like some hot chocolate while your dad finishes his meeting?" Min nodded eagerly. "I don't want to impose," Ruyon began. "It's no trouble at all." Ruyon studied her face, then made a decision. "I'll be another 30 minutes. If he's any trouble, he won't be." As Ruyon returned to his meeting, Amara settled Min at a small table near her desk with hot chocolate and crackers from the break room. She pulled up a children's website on her computer and let him play educational games while she worked. "Miss Amara," Min said after a while, "do you have kids?" "No, but I have a little sister. She's grown up now, but I remember when she was your age." "What was she like?" "Curious, like you. Always asking questions and getting into everything." Min giggled. "Appa says I ask too many questions." "There's no such thing as too many questions. That's how we learn." When Ruyon emerged from his meeting, he found Min curled up in Amara's lap, listening intently as she read him a story from her phone. "And the little dragon learned that being different made him special, not strange," Amara finished. "Read it again," Min requested sleepily. "Maybe tomorrow," Ruyon said, approaching them. "Time to go home." Min looked up at his father. "Can Miss Amara come with us?" "Miss Amara has her own home to go to," Ruyon said gently. "But I like her. She's nice." Something passed between Ruyon and Amara, a moment of understanding that felt more intimate than it should have. "Maybe Miss Amara can visit sometime," Ruyon said carefully. "Really?" Min's face lit up. "We'll see," Amara said diplomatically. As they gathered Min's things, Ruyon's phone buzzed with an urgent message. His expression darkened as he read it. "Amara, I need to make a quick call. Can you—" "Of course." She took Min's hand. "Come on, let's look at the fish tank in the lobby." While they were gone, Ruyon made a call that would change everything. "What do you mean they have photos?" he said quietly into the phone. "Surveillance photos of your new assistant. Doyang's people have been watching her for 2 weeks." Ruyon's blood ran cold. Doyang led a rival faction that had been trying to undermine his operations for months. "How much do they know?" "Enough to know she matters to you. Boss, if they move on her—" "They won't." Ruyon's voice was steel. "Double the security around the building. And I want to know everything about Doyang's movements." When Amara returned with Min, Ruyon was ending his call. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly. "Fine." He lifted Min into his arms. "Ready to go home, buddy?" As they waited for the elevator, Min looked back at Amara. "Bye, Miss Amara. See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow," she promised. The elevator doors closed, and Amara was alone with the strange feeling that something fundamental had shifted. She'd seen a different side of Ruyon today, Not the intimidating businessman, but a father who loved his son, and a man who was capable of gentleness. What she didn't know was that in accepting Min's affection so naturally, she'd crossed an invisible line. She was no longer just Ruyon's assistant. She was someone he cared about protecting, and in his world, that made her a target. The attack came at midnight on a Friday. Amara was in her apartment, grading papers for the tutoring job she still kept on weekends when her phone rang. Ruyon's name flashed on the screen. "Hello? Amara, listen carefully. You need to leave your apartment right now." His voice was controlled but urgent in a way that made her blood freeze. "What's wrong?" "I'll explain later. Go to the parking garage, level B2. A black SUV will be waiting. The driver's name is Marcus." "Ruyon, you're scaring me." "Good, you should be scared. Move now." The line went dead. Amara's hands shook as she grabbed her purse and keys. She'd learned to trust Ruyon's judgment completely over the past month, but this felt different, dangerous. She made it to the parking garage just as a black SUV pulled up. A large man with kind eyes rolled down the window. "Amara Johnson?" "Yes. I'm Marcus. Mr. Kim sent me." She got in and Marcus drove in silence through the empty streets of LA. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a luxury apartment building in a part of the city she'd never seen. "Penthouse level," Marcus said, handing her a key card. "Mr. Kim will be up shortly." The penthouse was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, a kitchen that belonged in a magazine. But Amara was too nervous to appreciate the luxury. Ruyon arrived an hour later, still in his business suit, but with his tie gone and his hair disheveled. The moment he saw her, relief flooded his features. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine. But I don't understand what's happening." Ruyon moved to the window, checking the street below before closing the blinds. "Sit down. I owe you an explanation." Amara perched on the edge of the sofa, her heart hammering. "The Meridian Group is legitimate," he began, "but it's not my only business. I run operations that exist outside the law." "You're in the Mafia." It wasn't a question. "Yes." Amara absorbed this, though part of her had suspected for weeks. "And someone wants to hurt me because I work for you?" "A rival faction has been watching you. Tonight they moved on your apartment. If you'd been there." He didn't finish the sentence. "How do you know all this?" "I have people watching my people. It's how I stay alive." Amara stood and walked to the window, processing everything. "So what happens now? Do I disappear? Get a new identity?" "I don't know yet." She turned to face him. "Be honest with me, Ruyon. How much danger am I in? Enough that I can't let you go home." The weight of that settled between them. Amara had built a life, small but hers. Her apartment, her sister, her weekend tutoring job. Now it was all gone, because she'd taken a job with a man who lived in shadows. "I should have told you," Ruyon said quietly. "Before you took the position, I should have been honest about what it meant. Would it have changed anything? You would have run. Maybe. Or maybe I would have stayed anyway." He looked at her sharply. "Why?" Amara considered the question. Over the past month, she'd seen Ruyon be ruthless in business, gentle with his son, and unfailingly protective of the people he cared about. She'd watched him make decisions that affected hundreds of people, always with careful consideration of the consequences. "Because you're not what I expected," she said finally. "What did you expect?" "A monster. Someone who hurt people for fun, who didn't care about anything but power." "Maybe I am those things." "No," her voice was firm. "I've seen you with Min. I've seen how you treat your employees, how you handle problems. You're dangerous, yes, but you're not cruel." Something shifted in Ruyon's expression. He crossed the room slowly, stopping just in front of her. "You don't know everything I've done. I don't need to. I know who you are now." "Amara." His voice was rough. "What?" "This isn't just about protecting an employee anymore." Her breath caught. "What is it about?" Instead of answering, he reached up and touched her face gently, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "You've changed everything," he whispered. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. He read it, and his expression hardened. "They found this place." "What?" "We need to go, now." As if summoned by his words, The sound of breaking glass came from somewhere below them. Ruyon grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a door she hadn't noticed before. Emergency exit. It leads to the roof. Ruyon, wait. No time. They ran up a narrow staircase as shouts echoed from the apartment below. On the roof, a helicopter was already waiting, its rotors spinning. Get in, Ruyon shouted over the noise. As they lifted off into the night sky, Amara looked down at the building they'd just escaped. Men in dark clothing were moving through the penthouse, searching. Where are we going? She called to Ruyon. Somewhere safe. For how long? He met her eyes, and she saw something there that made her stomach drop. I don't know. As the helicopter carried them away from everything familiar, Amara realized that her old life was truly over. Whatever came next, there would be no going back to the simple existence she'd known. She was part of Ruyon's world now, whether she'd chosen it or not, and his world was at war. The safe house was a cabin in the mountains, 2 hours outside LA. Surrounded by pine trees and silence, it felt like another world from the urban chaos they'd left behind. For 3 days, they lived in careful isolation. Ruyon made encrypted calls from a secure phone while Amara tried to process the magnitude of how her life had changed. She couldn't contact her sister, couldn't return to work, couldn't even step outside without Ruyon's permission. On the 4th morning, everything exploded. They have Min. Ruyon's voice was hollow as he ended a phone call. His face had gone completely pale. What? Amara stood from the kitchen table where she'd been reading. Doyang's people took him from school. They're using him to force me into the open. Amara watched as the man she'd come to care for crumbled before her eyes. Ruyon Kim, who commanded respect through fear and controlled an empire through careful strategy, was powerless against a threat to his son. What do they want? Me, in exchange for Min. His hands shook as he ran them through his hair. They want me to come alone to the old warehouse district. No weapons, no backup. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. His voice was bitter. But what choice do I have? He's 6 years old, Amara. He must be terrified. Amara moved to him instinctively, placing her hands on his shoulders. We'll figure this out. We? He looked at her with something like surprise. Yes, we. You're not doing this alone. Amara, you don't understand. If I go to that warehouse, I'm probably not coming back. And if I don't go, Min dies. Yes. Amara was quiet for a long moment, thinking, what if there was another way? There isn't. What if they thought you were coming alone, but you weren't? Ruyon studied her face. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that you're not the only one who cares about Min. And I'm suggesting that sometimes the best strategy is the one your enemy doesn't expect. 2 hours later, Amara sat in the passenger seat of Ruyon's car as they drove toward the warehouse district. She wore dark clothing and a bulletproof vest that was too big for her frame. This is insane, Ruyon said for the 10th time. I should never have agreed to this. Your men are already in position. Yes, but if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Amara's voice was steadier than she felt. We've been over the plan a dozen times. Plans change when bullets start flying. Then we adapt. Ruyon glanced at her. When did you become so brave? When someone I care about needed me to be. The warehouse was exactly as Ruyon had described, a sprawling building in an industrial area that had been abandoned for years. Perfect for an ambush. They parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance. Ruyon's phone buzzed with a text. Come alone to the main entrance. Any tricks and the boy dies. Remember, Ruyon said quietly. Wait for my signal. I remember. They separated at the corner. Ruyon walked toward the main entrance while Amara circled to the side of the building, where a broken window provided access. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of shadows and abandoned machinery. Amara moved carefully, following the route they'd memorized from building schematics. She could hear voices from the center of the warehouse, Ruyon's calm tone and another man's harsh laughter. The great Ruyon Kim, the voice said in accented English. Not so powerful now, are you? I'm here. Let my son go. Oh, I don't think so. You see, killing you quickly would be too easy. I want you to suffer first. Amara reached her position, a catwalk overlooking the main floor. Below, she could see Ruyon standing with his hands raised, facing a man with a scarred face who could only be Do-young. Behind them, Min sat tied to a chair, tears streaming down his face but trying to be brave. "Appa," Min called out when he saw his father. "It's okay, Minna," Ruyon said gently. "Everything's going to be okay." "How touching," Do-young sneered. "A family reunion." That was Amara's cue. She activated the signal device Ruyon had given her, a small pulse that would alert his men positioned around the building. Chaos erupted instantly. Windows shattered as Ruyon's team breached the warehouse from multiple points. Gunfire echoed through the space as Do-young's men scrambled for cover. In the confusion, Amara climbed down from the catwalk and ran toward Min. She reached him just as Do-young grabbed for his gun. "Stay away from him!" Do-young shouted, pointing the weapon at her. "Let the boy go," Amara said calmly, positioning herself between Do-young and Min. "This is between you and Ruyon. You're right," Do-young smiled coldly. "It is." He swung the gun toward Ruyon, who was fighting off two of Do-young's men. Amara didn't think. She grabbed a piece of broken machinery and threw it at Do-young's arm just as he pulled the trigger. The shot went wide, and Ruyon spun around to see Do-young raising the gun again. This time Ruyon was ready. The fight was over in seconds. When the dust settled, Do-young was dead. His men were either captured or had fled, and Min was sobbing in his father's arms. "Appa, I was so scared," Min cried. "I know, buddy, I know, but you were so brave." Ruyon looked over Min's head at Amara, who was sitting on the floor, shaking from adrenaline. "You saved his life," he said quietly. "We saved his life." Later, after the police had been called and stories had been coordinated, after Min had been checked by a doctor and put to bed in a new safe house, Ruyon found Amara standing on the balcony looking out at the city lights. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Too much adrenaline still." He joined her at the railing. "I owe you everything." "You don't owe me anything. Amara." He turned to face her fully. "What you did today, you could have been killed. So could you. So could Min. But you chose to risk it anyway. For us." She met his eyes. "Yes. Why?" "Because somewhere along the way you became my family too." Ruyon reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I want you to know something." "What?" "I want you in my life. Not as my assistant, not as someone I'm protecting. I want you as my partner, in everything." Amara felt her heart skip. "Ruyon, I know it's complicated. I know my world is dangerous. But I also know that I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. How do you feel about me?" "Like I've been waiting my whole life for you to walk into that interview room," Amara smiled, thinking of that day weeks ago when she'd been so desperate and afraid. Even barefoot. Especially barefoot. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You showed me that strength doesn't always look like power. Sometimes it looks like a woman who helps a sick child even when it costs her everything. And you showed me that dangerous doesn't always mean heartless. So what happens now?" Amara considered the question. Her old life was gone, but maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. She'd found something here she hadn't even known she was looking for, a place where she belonged, people who needed her as much as she needed them. "Now we figure out how to build a life together," she said. "All three of us? All three of us." Ruyon pulled her into his arms, and as he kissed her under the stars, Amara realized that sometimes the most unexpected paths led to exactly where you were meant to be. Amara stood in the kitchen of their new home, watching through the window as Ruyon taught Min how to throw a baseball in the backyard. The legitimate businesses had expanded, the illegal operations had been carefully phased out, and their family had found a peace she'd never imagined possible. "Mama Amara," Min called, running toward the house. "Did you see my throw?" "I saw it. You're getting so good." Min had started calling her Mama Amara 6 months after the warehouse incident, and it still made her heart flutter every time. Ruyon followed Min inside, sweaty and grinning. "Someone's ready for Little League." "Someone's ready for a shower," Amara teased, kissing his cheek. "Only if you join me," he murmured against her ear. "Ruyon?" she laughed, glancing at Min. "What?" "I meant we could wash the dishes together," he said innocently. That evening, after Min was asleep, they sat on their porch swing, Amara curled against Ruyon's side. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Giving up your old life?" Amara thought about the scared girl who'd walked into that interview barefoot and desperate. That girl had been looking for a job. Instead, she'd found a home. "Never," she said, "not for a single moment." Thank you for watching until the end. Korean Mafia Lovers has so many more passionate and thrilling stories waiting for you. Subscribe to our channel to never miss a new story. Your support helps us create these amazing tales of love and adventure.